Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. A deadline quickly approaching that could impact workers at all three of our local refineries.
United Steelworkers taking a hard look at a proposed contract agreement tonight that affects more than 30,000 union members in the oil sector nationwide. And unless they vote to ratify it, they could be off the job by midnight.
Now, earlier today, the United Steelworkers reached that tentative agreement with Shell Oil Company for a pattern settlement on wages, benefits, and working conditions.
Now, Shell is the lead company negotiator in that agreement and is expected to form the basis for contracts to other plants, including ones not owned by Shell.
And tonight, a labor official telling Q2 that the Laurel CHS refinery contract was narrowly passed just before 9 o'clock tonight. We've also learned that a tentative agreement has been reached at the Phillips 66 refinery. Our David J. is live tonight at the Exxon refinery in Lockwood. David, what have you been able to find out there?
Well, Russ, we're out here right on Exxon Mobil Road, right in front of the refinery. There are about 40 to 50 people out here doing some informational, not picketing, but just giving some information and some solidarity out here to some of the employees who have not yet settled their contract. We're told that they are in negotiations right now with ExxonMobil. Kind of stopped that for a little while, but they're going to be getting right back into it. Joining us now is a J.W. Westman, who's a worker here at ExxonMobil. And J.W., you've got a good group out here. What's happening out here with the signs and all tonight?
Well, this is a show of support for the ExxonMobil unit of the United Steelworkers 11470. Very good show of support. This is just a rally. This is not a picket. And a lot of people out here supporting us because like all of these folks here that are supporting us, all of the union people here at the refinery, we're all part of the community, and it's not just Billings and Lockwood and Laurel. It's, you know, Park City, Columbus, Roundup. The tentacles go out a long, long ways, and we are all part of this community. And we spend a lot of time at this refinery, and we want a fair contract. We also want our time away from this refinery as well. We want a life outside of here. We are part of the community. Everyone here is a part of the community. And our kids they go to school together, they've grown up together, they've played high school football and basketball, volleyball together, and we're just part of the community. We spend our money here local, and just, you know, community oriented. That's what we are.
Okay, great, thank you. That's J.W. Westman with the ExxonMobil people out here into the peaceful just demonstration out here, and they're still negotiating there on the inside, and they may have some other news later tonight. But that is the latest from out here. Russ and Jeanelle, back to you.
David J. reporting live from Exxon Refinery in Lockwood tonight. Thanks, David.
And of course, we'll have the latest on this story on KTVQ.com and on Q2's Montana this morning.
$700 million. That's how much it could cost to clean up contaminated coal ash disposal ponds at the Colstrip power plant.
That quote from the Montana Department of Environmental Quality shows the current estimate to be between $400 million and $700 million. Representative Daniel Zolnikov of Billings is the chair of the House Energy Committee. He says that the plant's 6 owners are required to pay bonds for the entire cleanup. Right now, the DEQ only has $80 million set aside for the cleanup effort.
Zolnikov also tells Q2 the plan to pay for the cleanup will be in place by the end of this year. The ash ponds have been leaking hazardous materials into the ground for years, and with the plant's future in jeopardy, questions have been raised about those responsibilities.
At the state capitol in Helena tonight, Governor Steve Bullock delivered his final State of the State address.
The two-term governor declared the condition of Montana to be stronger than ever, but told lawmakers there's still work to be done. Mike Dennison was there.
Governor Bullock talked up the economic successes of Montana under his leadership and then got down to business, touting his major initiatives on education, healthcare, and infrastructure. He noted his administration has made record investments in education and said it's time for lawmakers to step up again.
Let's provide kids and families in rural and urban areas access to high-quality, voluntary, affordable options. The future leaders of our state deserve no less. And let's not stop there. Let's once again freeze in-state college tuition and prevent what is effectively a tax increase on 28,000 Montana students and their families.
Majority Republicans in the audience didn't clap much for those proposals or for very much of anything. But some in the GOP are working on their own preschool proposal, which we'll see later this session. On infrastructure, the governor noted that Montana is out of the mainstream by failing for 6 years to pass a large bonded package of building projects.
We're out of step with the rest of the country. So I ask you to break that logjam. This session, let's deliver infrastructure for now and for the future generations that need it.
But he saved his strongest pitch for perhaps the biggest issue before the session, extending Medicaid expansion, the $600 million a year program that provides health coverage to 95,000 low-income adults in Montana.
Now, if I told you I had a business coming to Montana that'd create between 5,900 and 7,500 jobs in every corner of the state, and that would infuse over $350 million of new personal income into our state, my bet is you'd all tell me that sounds pretty darn good. Well, that's exactly what Medicaid expansion has done for the state of Montana.
Here too, however, Republican lawmakers are working up their own plan with work requirements that Bullock spoke out against Thursday night. Finally, the governor warned lawmakers not to send him a budget like 2 years ago, without a $300 million surplus or with contingency cuts.
And don't send me a budget where I'll have to make the cuts due to the failure of this legislature to leave money in the bank. Because if you do, I'll send it back.
In no uncertain terms, we know what the governor wants for Montana. The question now is, how will he get it? Or will he get it? At the Capitol, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Republicans in the legislature laid out a different set of priorities for the session tonight.
MTN's Jonathan Ambarian was there for their response to the state of the state.
Senate President Scott Sales of Bozeman said Republicans agree with the governor that Montana's economy is doing well, but he said they have a different vision of how the state should move forward. Sales said he's concerned about the share of federal money in the state's budget. He called for more emphasis on developing natural resources like timber and coal.
And with the technology and the laws that we currently have in place, we can do this in an environmentally friendly fashion that doesn't degrade the great outdoors that we all cherish.
And while Sales didn't directly address Governor Bullock's request to extend Medicaid expansion, he tied the health care issue back to economic growth.
The best health care program that anybody can have is a good job so they can buy their own health care.
Sales also made clear his opposition to Governor Bullock's proposal to raise revenue through tax and fee increases. There are likely to be many more battles over the budget over the next 3 months. At the Capitol, I'm Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
Butte police releasing some details about a 9-hour standoff and hostage situation aboard a bus that was bound for Billings last night. A 52-year-old man from Spokane remains in custody in Butte after hijacking a bus and holding one man hostage, according to police. He was armed and threatened the man on the bus, preventing him from escaping, even going so far as to say that he had a bomb. The suspect is believed to have been suffering from some kind of paranoia and mental health issues. The man eventually emerged from the bus around 9:30 last night after police shot tear gas inside. After he was apprehended, it was determined the man did not have a bomb. No one was injured in that event.
Now, the man held hostage on that bus sat down with MTN today. He was on his way back to Butte from Missoula, and he's just grateful he escaped.
All of a sudden, this guy, he had some kind of a hat and a pistol inside of it, and he put it in my face and said, "Sit down or die." He told me we were both gonna die today. And the reason he ordered a meal was so that I could have my last meal because he already ate his.
Police left food in the doorway of the bus, and that's when Damien took a big chance.
And I said, "Hey, just let me reach down and grab it." And when I started to move forward, our bodies became separated, and I felt that chance, and I spun around and punched him as hard as I could and ran off out of the bus. And I escaped.
Now, Baumgartner says he could relate to the man because he also was homeless and has a criminal past, but he's also grateful for the new life he's been able to start.
Now, turning to the weather now, Bob, we're about to see 50s for a couple of days, and then the big drop, just the opposite.
The other shoe drops. Let me show it to you. Here's the way it's going to play out. As you see here, there's where we are about 6 a.m. on Saturday morning. The snow is starting to make its way into the western part of the state. Then by that afternoon, it starts turning into rain, moving into the Billings area. But then what happens after that, by Saturday night into Sunday, the entire state gets engulfed in a lot of snow moving in. And so how much snow are we talking about? Well, here's what it looks like by Sunday, 10 p.m. About 4 to 6 inches of snow for Billings, maybe 6 to 10 inches Livingston, same thing in Bozeman, 4 to 6 in Miles City. Then here's what happens later on next week. Now Billings is going to 10 to 14 inches of snow, 20 inches at Livingston and Bozeman, 6 to 10 inches of snow in Miles City. And you see all around the rest of the state, a lot of snow moving in. It's a significant snow event, and it starts next week. We'll have more coming up in a few more minutes.
All right, thank you, Bob.
With the Super Bowl just days away, viewers will be looking for the chance to win big. And these days, you no longer have to travel to Sin City to make those dreams come true.
Q2's Casey Conlon's taking a closer look at what this could mean. Tonight, he shows us how sports betting has found its place in the U.S. and when it might be heading to Montana.
Russ and Jeanelle, Sunday is the biggest day of the year for advertisers, grocery stores, and sports gamblers. Last year, $158 million was wagered in Nevada on the Super Bowl, an all-time record. But that number will be dwarfed this year because of a Supreme Court ruling last May that has brought betting into the mainstream more than ever before. Sports gambling has a complicated history in the United States. You can trace origins back to horse racing during the Civil War and the rise of boxing in the early 1900s. But the industry was largely underground, frowned upon in public thanks to numerous scandals, none more famous than 8 members of the Chicago White Sox throwing the World Series 100 years ago this October. Nevada was the first state to legalize sports betting in 1949, but the federal government imposed a 10% tax on winnings, which many early operators couldn't cover, so the industry was basically dead on arrival. Then, in 1974, that tax was reduced to 2%, and the Las Vegas sportsbook you know today was born.
3 key elements to having a sportsbook. You wanted to enhance the overall resort, the property experience. You wanted to attract new customers and make some money.
Vinny Magliulo is a Vegas heavyweight, going back to his days in charge of the Caesar Palace Sportsbook in the 80s and 90s. He was there when Congress passed the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act in 1992, barring states from offering any new forms of sports wagering. Just 4 of them offered some type at the time: Nevada, Oregon, Delaware, and Montana. That's why you see squares pools in bars and the famous pig races just outside Red Lodge. Montana had the chance to legalize full-scale wagering, so why didn't they? Because of the state's largest sports governing body, according to one of its most famous sons.
Montana was grandfathered in. They could have done it, but the NCAA basically put a gun to their head and said you won't have any more championship events in Missoula or Bozeman if you go ahead and legalize it. And of course, the legislature wilted.
In his 50 years as a sportscaster, Brent Musburger has always acknowledged that gambling plays a large role in sports, so much so that he now is the managing editor at the Vegas Stats and Information Network, a gambling-centric sports talk show based in the South Point Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, a show that has become much more popular across the country in the last 8 months for one reason.
In a 6-3 vote yesterday, the justices struck down a decades-old federal law.
On May 14th of last year, the Supreme Court voted to overturn the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, making it legal for all 50 states to approve new betting legislation. So far, 7 have. New Jersey was first, taking bets starting midway through June, and in just 6.5 months, saw $1.25 billion wagered in 2018. Some believe the more states that allow it, the worse it will be for Nevada, who has held a monopoly for so long. But that hasn't been the case so far. The 2 highest grossing months in Silver State history were this past November and September.
I think what it shows overall is that our industry, our niche industry or cottage industry at one time is now becoming more mainstream. And I think what it's doing is creating more customers overall. So I think it's a good thing.
That's what Montana tavern and casino owners are hoping for. Kirk Dealer runs the Enterprise, the only casino in Billings that offers pari-mutuel wagering at horse racing tracks around the country.
It's been a really good thing to get people in the door. just having that little niche that brings people in the door and keeps them around. And you know, I've known a lot of people that have actually called here and like, do you guys have sports betting?
The short answer is no. The longer answer is not yet, but maybe soon. 3 different organizations are writing legislation right now, with a draft possibly finished as early as tomorrow. Join us after the Super Bowl on Sunday, where we dive into the timeline and what sports gambling in Montana might look like. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Casey. Now, are you in favor of legalizing sports betting here in Montana?
You can weigh in on KTVQ.com. You can find a poll that we've got going right there under the Community tab.
Coming up on tonight's 10 o'clock news, safety and effectiveness, the heart of the matter for cardiologists in Montana. We'll show you some progress.
And in sports, wait till you see what the Yellow Jacket men did to Central Washington tonight. Scott will have all the highlights.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.